The lesson makes another excellent point about not forcing the will, that God doesn't force the will. He has the power to do so, but we already talked about why he won't. Because to force the will erases and destroys individuality and creates robots, and he won't do that, and their love doesn't exist in that place. Love only exists in freedom. Therefore, God will never use power to force people. God is like a loving parent, however, who will discipline, which comes from the root word disciple, meaning to teach. So the interventions are designed to be teaching interventions. He's not a punishing God, comes from the word punitive, okay? Exact vengeance upon. That's not who God is. So he disciplines those he loves, but he's not interested in coercing them. Well, then what about the three angels' messages? Does the three angels' messages sound warm and loving and kind and encouraging, or does it sound threatening? The smoke of their torment, fire and brimstone. They'll be tortured. A cup of his wrath without any mercy being poured out, and the cup of his indignation, and so forth and so on. Is he threatening? Is he coercing? Do it or else? Well, if you don't have our little magazine, Final Message of Mercy to the World, the three angels, we explain. How do you explain the three angels in a way that show it's actually not God coercing or threatening? We have some here in the room. If you're online watching, you can go and get the digital version, or if you have a U.S., Australian, or South African post office address, we have them available at no cost. But I encourage you to check this out. You'll discover that God is simply describing reality, the design laws of God. The first angel's message is about the eternal good news, the eternal gospel. What's the eternal good news?
God is love.
There it is. God is love. Do you know how many people, if you ask, what's the eternal good news? That we can be saved from sin. Wait a minute. Was there a time we didn't exist but angels did? Yes, there was. Was there a time that Lucifer hadn't yet sinned? So was there a time when we didn't need salvation from sin? No, being it sinned yet. Was there any good news then? No good news. It's all bad news. Or was there still good news? Eternal in the past, eternal in the future. The eternal good news is that God is love. He always was. He changes not. That news has never changed. Satan lied about it, but the eternal good news is what it's always been, who God is. That's the first angel. And at this time in history, that message says, hey, give him glory and be in awe of him, because it's finally come. The time in human history has come. For what? The hour of
Judgment.
God's judgment has come. Meaning? Well said. She said, our judgment of him. The hour of God's judgment has come. Does that mean God's judicial magistrate reviewing legal records through a human law court, like we have law courts? Or does it mean that God has been lied about through history by his enemy? And finally, a time in history has come that enough truth about him has been recovered that we can make a right judgment about him. And Paul says in Romans 3:4, God, may you be proved right when you are judged. Romans 3:4. It's always been about God. And this time in history, the message to go forward is God is not like a human dictator. God is not an imperial magistrate. God is not a maker just making up willy-nilly rules and then enforces them with external threats and punishment. God is the creator of reality. And so we worship him who made the heavens, the earth, the sea. We worship the one whose laws are the laws that sustain all reality. Stop judging him to be like a Caesar. See him as the creator. And then, accepting the first angel, you go to the second angel, and you come out of Babylon. You come out of the human government systems, Babylon, the first nation that had an imperial law code, the Code of Hammurabi, that enforces it through punishment. And all the systems of the world and every kingdom of the world works this way. We come out of those systems and we again worship him who made the heavens. And if you don't like the God who is the creator and whose laws are design laws, if you don't want to leave Babylon and you prefer a God who makes up laws and will ultimately have a judicial magistrate and inflict punishments on people, then you will reap the natural consequences, the third angel's message. And by beholding, we become changed, the law of worship. You will become like that law, and you'll be marked. You'll be marked in your character to be beastly if you worship the beast, but you will be sealed in your character to be godly if you accept the eternal good news. And then, if you're marked in your character to be beastly, God will give you up the law of liberty, which is his wrath, letting go. Romans chapter 1, the wrath of God is being revealed against all godlessness and, for those who suppress the truth about God. And therefore, God gave them up. He gave them up. Verse 24, 26, and 28 of Romans 1. And so the law of liberty, God will set you free to reap what you've chosen if you mark yourself in character to be beastly. And what do you reap? Well, then you reap the full weight, where he no longer seals you or insulates you or hides you from his infinite presence when he comes. And it says right in the text that they are tortured with divine fire. The Greek is theon, from which is translated brimstone or eternal fire. But it says it right in the text, in the presence of the holy angels and the Lamb. God reveals his unveiled glory. You get pictures of it all through Scripture. And the Ancient of Days takes his throne, and rivers of fire come out before him, and 10,000 times 10,000, and thousands of thousands stand in this. If you have rejected the gospel about God, if you have instead worshiped the imperial dictator that comes out of a Babylonian-type system, an authoritarian rule maker that punishes rule breakers, if you don't worship the Creator, then you will become beastly in character, and he will leave you free and abandon you and no longer intercede for you to protect you from those consequences, and you will stand in his unveiled life-giving glory, and the full weight of infinite truth and love will burn into you, and you will have full awareness of what you have chosen, who you are in character, in contrast to the goodness of God. You will have awareness of every sin you've ever committed. You will have awareness of all the harm you've caused to the people. You will have no insulation from the guilt and the shame and the self-loathing that unremedied sin brings into the heart and mind, because that's who you actually are, and that is the truth of the matter. And it will cause a terrible weeping and gnashing and agony, and the smoke of their torment rises forever. Smoke is what's left after everything's burned up. The memory of what happened, the lessons taught, will never be forgotten for all eternity. It's a beautiful, life-saving message of how God actually built reality. There's no threat involved. There's no threat. Any more than there's a threat to say if you smoke 2 packs a day, you're going to get lung cancer and heart disease. There's no threat. You're free to do it or not do it. Same here. God is warning. God will never use his power. The point is, this warning is not God coercing. He's not threatening. There is a being who will coerce and threaten. There's a being who will take your liberties from you. There's a being who would love you to be a puppet that he controls, that doesn't want you to be in control of your own mind. There is a being who likes to govern from authoritarian power, who wants to have a serf class serve him and empower him. And his pundits, human pundits on earth, look through human history. They end up running the human governments. Elites exploiting the masses for the benefit of the elites, whereas Christ, though he was equal with God, did not think equality with God was something to be grasped, but humbled himself, sacrificing himself all the way to the grave for the purpose of uplifting us. It's a complete opposite. Well, have you seen the warning signs that the Bible predicts before the second coming of Christ? You've been watching. Have you seen? Do you remember Jesus gave a prophecy about weaving together the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70 with the second coming of Christ? And he gave a prophecy that the Christians, when they saw the abomination that causes desolation surrounding the city, they were to flee. And the Roman army came down, surrounded the city in AD 70, and then they pulled back for a brief time, and all the Christians fled, and they weren't caught up in it. This is an object lesson for us. Jerusalem represents the beautiful land, the people of God, the righteous. They're caught up in a war between satanic forces. Understand the Jewish leadership that crucified Christ were not representing the kingdom of God. Get your mind around that. Yes, that nation was called by God, but those people that were running that nation, they were not on God's team. The Roman army were not representing the people of God or God's kingdom. Two forces, the people of God were mixed in amongst them, and when the warning came, they fled. God worked historically through the Jewish nation to bring truths to the world, the inspired writers retaining the scriptures and spreading them and making them available through history, the sanctuary message, a health message, the Sabbath, looking forward to the an Advent message of the advent of the Messiah. And from that group, from that organization, came individuals who accepted Jesus and took the gospel to the world. Yet that organization and its leadership rebelled, rejected Christ, crucified him. And a warning was given by Christ for all who were not part of the rebellion, but were still faithful to God, that when they saw this warning sign, they were to leave the city. And they did, and they weren't caught up in it. We stand in a similar position. King of the South, liberalism, godlessness, is attacking King of the North, religious imperialism. And the warning sign recently went out. I don't know if you saw it. It was a global warning, just like the Roman army surrounding Jerusalem. And then it pulled back, and we're in the pullback right now. It's time to flee. What was the warning? And by the way, the fleeing is not a physical fleeing, because there's no place geographically to flee to.